Good evening once again, everyone. And of course, it is a pleasure to be back for this evening's edition of DM with PM. As always, I'm your host, Aruna, and of course, I want to take the opportunity to welcome our partner stations, Power FM, Star FM, We FM, GBN, Fusion FM, and of course, Vibes FM to the live show. And we must say special evening as well to our viewers on Facebook and YouTube. Trust everyone is doing well as we gear up for another interactive session with our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, who is in studio with us. Good evening, Prime Minister, and it's good to be back again.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back. It sounds like you had so much fun with the SAS double win that you've lost your voice.
Don't forget Dinawasa SAS.
Dinawasa SAS.
All right.
Sorry, Nawasa. The water.
Because you know the way the GBSS, you have to put D in front of the GBSS. You want the Nawasa in front of the SAS. I forgot my blue dress today, but it's all good.
I'm repping for you. I'm repping for you.
You're repping for me.
I'm in blue.
So there's a lot of catching up to do. We have been pretty busy in the health sector, and I think that's where most of the conversation will be. There's a lot happening, especially on Friday. We'll get to that as well. But in the meantime, I just want to ask everyone on the live to do us a quick favor and to share it with your friends and family so they'll know what's happening and they'll get the first-hand information live and direct from our Prime Minister. So before we get into it, how have you been?
I've been well, been keeping busy and hopefully staying out of trouble.
You say no news is good news, right? And we have not heard anything bad. So you're doing a good job. Alrighty, so like I said, we want to focus a bit on healthcare this week. And on that note, the government has articulated a bold vision of, making Grenada the medical capital of the OECS. What does that mean in practical terms for citizens and for the region?
Right. In practical terms, I think first we want our population to be the healthiest in the region. So that means first we have to eat the right type of food, eat food that is nutritious and food that heals us rather than makes us sick. Second, we have to have the lifestyle that keeps us healthy. One of the key ingredients to that lifestyle is being active. Third, we need to make sure that our environment is clean. The air quality, the water quality, the natural environment, so that we mitigate risk associated with our citizens being sick as a result of a poor environment. And then fourth, we have to have the healthcare systems in place that would allow us to ensure that we encourage a healthy lifestyle in terms of education, in terms of our food, in terms of our behavior, and critically the response health systems from our primary healthcare to our secondary healthcare systems that ensures that when we do get sick, we are in a position to respond and treat our citizens. So in practical terms, we think if we do this, it allows us to set an example for our brothers and sisters in the OECS, and crucially for us to have the facilities, the health systems, the practices, the data sets, and the response mechanisms that would allow us to serve our brothers and sisters in the region as well in terms of the medical aspect of a healthy OECS.
Now, how does the concept of a medical ecosystem reshape the way we traditionally think about healthcare delivery in Grenada?
Well, that's a very important question. I think having the Project Polaris is a perfect example of what we are seeking to do. The first thing we recognize is that just simply getting land to build a hospital is not sufficient. And that's why we acquired as much as 84 acres of land, because we wanted to be able to create a cluster, a hub, an ecosystem that allows us to not just have a hospital, but we talked about eating right. So there's an opportunity for us to integrate the right nutrition, agriculture, food systems, research, nutrition into this. It allows us to integrate medical tourism, not just in terms of surgeries or the actual clinical aspects of it, but also healthy living, healthy lifestyles, well-being, because this is important as well. And so when you have things like nature, a clean environment, or beaches or waterfalls, to ensure that we can integrate all of this into the health systems. Crucially, ensuring that we are able to conduct public health research, because this is critical, as you know, to a large extent. Inventions in medicines, inventions in surgical procedures require tons and tons of research. It requires tons and tons of investment, but oftentimes research is done on one ethnic group in a lot of the advanced developed countries, and not necessarily in places like the Caribbean or in Africa or South or Central Latin America, where the ethnic groups are more diverse. And so we think there's an opportunity for public education, public research, piggybacking on the fact that we already provide significant, what I will call educational tourism in the form of St. George's University. So it allows us to leverage that ecosystem. And crucially, it allows us to, in a sense, put what I call the finishing touch to the St. George's University cluster, which is ensuring that there's a hospital, that the medical students, the nurse students can move from the academic environment into a world-class medical facility, hospital facility, research teaching facility that allows them to actually finish that part of their education and crucially be able to do so in Grenada, thereby serving Grenadians while doing so. And since St. George's University is an international university, it's one approach for us to be able to hopefully retain more of the persons who graduate from St. George's University in Grenada so that we can fill that human capacity deficit that we currently have and that the OECS, in fact, currently have. So we all view this as being intertwined, interlocking. And I think it's important for us to emphasize the success of the Project Polaris and the sustainability of the hospital is going to be determined not by how many people come to the hospital, but by how many people don't come. And therefore it means our primary healthcare system must be the first point of contact, and that our primary healthcare system must be able to take care of what I call a routine run-of-the-mill medical issues, and it is only the most serious cases that should then graduate to a general hospital. So we're hoping as well that that gives us, and I think it's already starting, the impetus to strengthen our primary healthcare systems, because we recognize, based on the numbers of persons who come to the general hospital, I believe I've seen stats that suggest sometimes in a given period, as much as a month, you could have 25,000 visits to the general hospital. But that's simply not sustainable. And then you have some of our health and medical facilities, the primary ones, where you're getting a trickling of people coming. So we have to be able to reverse that trend, and that is why the ecosystem has to be, it's not just about the hospital, but how the hospital helps us to reshape and rebalance with our practice or procedures or systems, the health system, so that things that can be treated at the primary healthcare, the medical stations, the health centers are in fact treated there, and they do not come to the general hospital.
Because I think it's somewhat of a belief, because I've heard, people saying, I prefer to go to the hospital because I think I will get better, service there. I think I'll be, taken care of there.
And that's a myth. I think what we have to make sure is that we build the education and the confidence that people have in the primary healthcare system. Because I say to people quite often, as I said at the town hall last week, we already have a private medical health industry that is quite thriving in Grenada. A lot of people choose to go to a private practitioner first as their first point of contact with the health systems. But the private practitioners are quite limited, certainly in terms of facilities, in terms of equipment, in terms of personnel. And once it goes beyond a certain stage, it is the same general hospital you're going to go back to. So in many instances, you can actually go to the health centers, to the medical stations, where you don't have to pay in the current system. And if only then it can be handled, then it's escalated to the hospital. So we have to build the confidence of the public in going to the primary healthcare systems. And I'm a living example of this. I have never been treated at a general hospital in Grenada. And certainly up to, I didn't even know what a general hospital was until I was a full-blown adult, because I never had to go to the general hospital. Almost every medical issue I had was treated at a medical station or health center. And I think I'm quite better off for it. So we have to reverse that trend. I think in the 1980s, in particular, and early 1990s, we did a very good job of ensuring people viewed the health centers and the medical stations as their first point of contact with the health systems, and we have to be able to go back to that.
That's what we knew. Now, there's a lot of whys, and before we get to the approach, what does a climate smart hospital represent in the context of this national transformation? And this is where the why comes in. Why was this approach chosen? Right.
Well, I could give a perfect example, Hurricane Beryl. It has to be climate smart, it has to be climate resistant, because we can't build infrastructure that cannot withstand the ravages of the significant climatic shifts we have. So it has to be a hospital that, one, is able to withstand category 3, 4, 5, and maybe if they even get stronger hurricanes. It has to be a hurricane that does not consume excessive energy, and that can rely on an energy mix that prioritizes green energy. And I'm using green in the context here that, for example, with solar, to a large extent the sun is free. You don't have to pay for it. You may have to pay for the panels and the batteries and so on, but you don't have to pay for it. And crucially, you don't have to worry about whether there'll be a shortage of oil or gas or diesel if a war breaks out, or if there's an embargo or any of those sort of things. So we have to be able to ensure that we can encourage energy self-sufficiency. It means, for instance, we are exploring the possibility of geothermal. If we're able to discover geothermal, it means building the hospital in such a way that we can get the power from the geothermal. It means recycling as much as we can our water systems. It means ensuring that our waste disposal and grey water is integrated in such a manner that as much of it can be reused. Of course, with a hospital, you have biohazards. It means planning properly for this to make sure, again, that if you have floods, if you have hurricanes, that you can protect the hospital. And one of the things Damien and Andrea talked about is how you situate things within the hospital, so that the hospital has been built in such a way, if, God forbid, you had a once in 100 years, a Noah flood, that the crucial parts of the hospitals are elevated sufficiently that it will virtually be impossible for the flood water to get to it. And similarly, if you had issues with the roofing, right, that again, it's not the top floor that will house the crucial parts of the hospital to sustain it. So that's an example of what we mean by climate smart. It means also building it so you can take advantage of natural sunlight. We know sunlight is crucial for healing and improvement. Those are the sort of things that we are integrating to make sure that we build something that is future ready. Not just something that has a nice artistic design, but making sure that it could withstand the challenges, whether it's drought, whether it's flooding, whether it's hurricane, the use of natural sunlight, the use of green energy, to make sure that it is something we can be proud of.
How is the government ensuring that communities, especially vulnerable or rural populations, are not left behind in this transition?
Well, I will answer this by saying the fact that the hospital is moving from the heart of the city, overlooking the Carnage and the Esplanade, into what I would call a more suburban area between the border of St. George and St. David, I think points first to accessibility. We recognize that the current location of the General Hospital makes it inaccessible to most persons, and elderly persons, for example, persons with disability. Traffic is terrible, limited parking. So just the physical relocation to a very accessible part of Grenada, I think, is one way of ensuring that happens. Second, and I think that is important, and I've said this, we want to make sure that the hospital is integrated into the general health system and connected particularly with or health centers and our medical stations, and that is something that obviously we will build out over time. But I think there's an aspect of it that is important to point out right now. We are already strengthening and improving the quality of care, the quality of service, and the quality of delivery at the General Hospital. Once those standards are set, the intent then is to make sure that we pass those standards on to the health centers, to the medical stations, so that there should be no double standard between what are basic clinical practices. For example, the need to wash your hands, the need for signage, the need for patient identification, the need for ensuring that your labs are outfitted properly, that the right temperatures exist, to make sure that the medicines are stored properly, all of those things. So the aim of the quality improvement, and it's not just physical infrastructure, the aim of the quality improvement is to build a health system in terms of our practice, behavior, collection and storage of data, collection and storage of medicines, the stores, that actually benefits the entire health system, not just the cluster of the hospitals in the sense of the general hospitals and Maribo and Carriacou.
What investment opportunities would you say exist for local businesses, regional partners, or the diaspora within this emerging medical ecosystem?
Huge. The hospital alone will probably occupy about maybe 15 acres of land. We have 84 acres. So if you're talking medical tourism, there are huge opportunities there. If you're talking retirement medical tourism, there are huge opportunities. If you're talking elderly care, there are huge opportunities. If you're talking wellness, from retreats to yoga to nutrition to healthy foods, the idea is all of that should be clustered. If we're talking technology, data sets, research, all of those things are required, and that's why we wanted to create the cluster. I mean, stage one obviously is the physical construction, and there are opportunities there for local, regional, from construction of roads, the construction of buildings, to the subcontracting, to the electrical, plumbing, you name it. Just on the construction side alone, there are significant opportunities. Even when the contractors bring in their workmen, they have to be fed. So providing food, providing wastewater services, providing medical services for them, providing housing, because no doubt we'll have to import some of the labor. So we see this as an opportunity for significant economic activity over a sustained period of time and for the build-out. I think it's important for us to also say that I think as a developing country, there will be opportunities in the health space that we have because of less regulations, because we probably will be prepared to be, I think, more flexible and more enterprising in our approach to healthcare and emerging medical technologies, that I think there'll be significant opportunities for persons to pursue some of those with the government of Grenada in partnership to build out that ecosystem. So I would certainly say if I was in the region, I'm looking at and I'm an investor, someone interested in healthcare, I would say Grenada is the place to be over the next 5 years or so.
All right, listeners and viewers, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We have so much more to tell you about as we focus on healthcare this evening, but we have to take our very first break. And when we come back, we'll take some of your questions. Back in a few.
Every generation has its moment. A moment when a nation decides to build something greater for its people, for its future. For Grenada, that moment is now. The government of Grenada invites the entire nation to witness the groundbreaking ceremony for the new General Hospital under Project Polaris. Be there as we break ground on a future where every Grenadian has access to modern, world-class healthcare. Friday, 27th March, at the Project Polaris site, Calavini, St. George. Arrive at 3:30 p.m. The ceremony begins at 4 p.m. sharp. Bring your pride, bring your hope, and witness the beginning of a new chapter in Grenada's history. Project Polaris, building the future of healthcare, building the future of Grenada.
Welcome back once again to all our viewers and listeners of DMs with PM, your Tuesday evening program where you get to interact directly with the Prime Minister. Of course, for the past couple minutes, we've been discussing Project Polaris and, of course, healthcare. And now you have the opportunity to get some of your questions read and answered. I think we have our very first DM from Travis Hall. What policies are in place in Grenada regarding the maintenance of government-owned buildings, public institutions, and national infrastructure, which fall under the responsibility of the state? Additionally, to what extent are these policies effectively implemented? It is often observed that inadequate maintenance of public assets leads to the deterioration and eventual replacement costs that could have been significantly reduced through consistent and timely upkeep.
Well, thank you, Travis, for the question and also the comment. I agree with the comments that you've made. When we got into office, there was in fact no policy. There was little or no maintenance occurring. There was little or no preventative maintenance occurring. The only entity which had sort of been tasked with maintenance and repair work was the Financial Complex Limited. And so we've set about the process of starting consistent preventative and maintenance policies in relation to all state-owned businesses. So let's start first with the reforms we tried with the Financial Complex Limited. We've renamed it the facilities. Instead of finance, we focus on facilities. The aim here is to ensure that we can make sure that the focus is clear, that is on repairs and maintenance. We recognize, however, that the facilities and finance, the FCL Limited, simply did not have the capacity and the bandwidth to maintain all government assets. So what we've sought to do is to identify those assets that it will be primarily responsible for, and then to begin the process of outsourcing and contracting third-party contractors to maintain government buildings. So I will start with the Ministry of Education, for example. Schools, we know where the pain points are. You have toilets, you have lights, you have fans, and these are sort of almost recurring areas that constantly need maintenance and repair. So what we sought to do is to zone the schools, and we've given retainer contracts to contractors so that they are primarily responsible for what we call routine maintenance, and it allows them to report into the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Infrastructure the state of the schools, so that when we need heavier type maintenance, then it can be better planned and we can then have the appropriate responses to this. So we've done this for the first year. Last year, we've revised it and tightened it up a bit to make sure that we're getting good value for money. So that is just one example of what we've done. We have also decided to ensure that the Ministry of Infrastructure itself is sort of split into, as we begin the reorganization, split into departments that have particular focus on buildings only. And we can identify those buildings which, as I said, the Facilities Limited will focus on. So they are what I call national buildings like the Ministerial Complex. And if you've been paying attention, you would observe that there's been significant enhancement both to the external and interior of the ministerial complex, and that work is ongoing. Everything from the air conditioning, air quality, removal of carpets, painting, maintenance of the air condition, refrigeration systems, the bathrooms, and this work is ongoing and will continue to do so. Our police stations, there's been, in many instances, virtually some of the conditions of the police stations were unbelievable. And we've set about the systematic repair and maintenance and improvement of the police stations throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, and that is ongoing. The financial complex is a major challenge. In fact, the entire staff have been moved out. The intent is to renovate and repair the entire complex. It's going to be a significant project, bearing in mind we obviously want to maintain the historical facade of the building. So it's an ongoing process. We are certainly looking to standardize and improve and make sure that preventative maintenance becomes a normal feature of the government's response to maintaining its own buildings, and so that we can properly log and be able to plan when we are going to require major maintenance of buildings and be able to plan that out and invest for it. Part of this as well is also ensuring that more and more we can insure government buildings, so that if you have hurricanes or you have fires and so on, we also have the ability to restore and to repair. But we are not anywhere close to where we would like to be when it comes to maintaining government buildings. We are looking to put in place a government asset management system so that we can actually particularly have an accurate inventory of all government buildings, the state that the buildings are in, and to be able to then predict the useful life of the buildings, both in terms of how long they will last and how much capital investment we will need to repair and replace them, as well as how much we will be able to maintain them. But the government has significant assets under its control, and there has not been, in a sense, a centralized department within the Ministry of Infrastructure that was focusing only on buildings, and that is part of what we're working to be able to create.
Okay. I think we have another DM from Elizabeth Abigail Sampson. Are there plans to introduce stronger security measures to prevent prison escapes in Grenada?
Elizabeth, yes. I mean, I could ask the Commissioner of Prisons to perhaps provide more specific details in a more technical sense on this, but our goal always is to prevent no prison escapes from Grenada, and to that extent, certainly from a physical infrastructure perspective, we are constantly seeking to improve the security of the prisons. I'm not going to get into the level of detail, but there are a number of things we've introduced at the prisons that is ongoing. And we have to recognize the facility is very, very, very old. We are reviewing plans to build a new prison, but on the same compound. We believe that there's significant acreage there that could facilitate the construction of a new prison. But the safety of the population is significantly of concern to us. I could just give a simple example of how we are in fact very much concerned about it. We've recruited, I think, don't hold me to the number, but I believe as much as 40 new prison officers. Because when we got there, the prison was significantly understaffed. The men and women, the prison officers who keep us safe, in many instances were stretched. That was leading to significant impact on their health, and naturally also it will compromise the quality of security that they can provide. So just the fact that we've been able to recruit, the fact that we've been able to regularize and confirm many of the prison officers, the fact that we've been able to sign collective bargaining agreements twice now since this administration has been in office with the prison officers, and the fact that we've been able to, as I said, promote, confirm, appoint a new prison commissioner is a recognition of how critical the prison is and how we take the safety and security of the nation seriously.
And we have another question, anonymous. In regards to mold, can you please have a look at the different magistrates' courts, especially in St. David and St. George's?
Yes, that has been an ongoing issue for the entire duration of my practice as a RGPF, to ensure that the truck driver, the proprietors of the truck, are able to discipline their drivers, ensuring that they don't break the law. Trucks on the road is a major thing that we have to pay some more attention to, I think, both in terms of practice and law, because some of the trucks simply, the capacity of the trucks or roads simply can't accommodate it. And certainly in circumstances where we are actually trying to repair the road as a result of the wear and tear, and we are asking heavy equipment operators, truck drivers, concrete trucks to comply with detour, and they don't, then certainly vigilant citizens like yourself who are able to capture this matter and bring it to attention would allow us to ensure that law enforcement can take more decisive action against the truck drivers and other road users who abuse the privilege of being able to drive on our roads. So thank you very much for your, I will say, paying attention to your civic duty and responsibilities to help us enforce the law.
Okay. And we have another question from the street.
My name's Jessica, and I would like to know if there is a regulatory body for rent in Grenada. From my own experience and that of local people here and friends I know, rent seems to be extremely high compared to the minimum wage. I think minimum wage is 1,200 or something along those lines. But when I've looked through the agents' websites or Facebook Marketplace for places to rent, it seems that on average you're looking at least 2,000 EC at the very least. It's more like 1,000 US for a one-bedroom apartment, and the standard of that apartment, there doesn't seem to be any standards in place for what you get for that. So it's like old buildings. You're not really getting your money's worth. So I just want to know, is there something in place to make living more affordable for your average Grenadian?
Thank you, Jessica, for the question. I think it's more than one question. So first, on our books, on the legislation, we have a Rent Restriction Act, and there should in fact be a Rent Restriction Board, and primarily it's enforced through the Magistrates Court. But this legislation is patterned on the Rent Restrictions Act of the United Kingdom, which were enacted after World War II, when there was a severe shortage of housing in the UK as a result of all of the bombings that the UK would have endured during World War II. In the 1980s, the PRG government, I think, enacted rent restriction legislation sort of patterned on this. The challenge is that in practice it has not, except perhaps in select cases that go to court, been enforced. We have to balance on the one hand the right of persons to private property and to be able to build homes and offer them to the market and be able to get a return on the investment they make. And on the other hand, the affordability and persons who may not be able to afford the rents that are being charged. So that's the first challenge. And as I said, yes, the Rent Restriction Act is in place, but it's not enforced, and it probably needs significant modernizing. And then we would need a strong regulatory body to address this. But even doing so, we'd have to be able to balance the rights of its private property. And we are in a society where there are very few limitations on the use of private property once it doesn't infringe on the rights of others. So we have to bear that in mind. But in terms of what the government has been doing to make living conditions more affordable, you rightly pointed to the minimum wage. It's our administration that has moved the minimum wage on average up to around $1,200. In many instances where people were working for $700 or $800. So that's one step we've taken. Second, in terms of affordable housing, I'm not sure if you're aware, but all over Grenada, in Boucherjou, in Diamond, in Corinth, in St. David, in St. Patrick, significant inventory, as in excess of over 600 plus rooms have been put on the market at significantly reduced prices. The one-bedroom apartments in the Chinese-built affordable housing communities sell at, on average, $45,000. The two-bedroom apartments sell for $75,000. If you compare that with a motor vehicle in Grenada, it is cheaper. So that's in excess of 600 rooms that have been placed on the market. And I forgot to mention Carriacou and Petit Martinique as well. The government is embarking upon Project 500. We've done the pilot in Dunfermline in St. Andrew. We've almost completed the construction of 17 homes. We are learning the lessons from that pilot, and we hope to announce very soon phase 2, where we will embark upon as much as the construction of 72 homes. We hope to do this primarily in conjunction with the private sector and the private financing institutions, again, so that we can get to a point where we have a lot more homes available on the market at what we anticipate to be significantly reduced pricing when compared to the normal cost of constructing a home. But I do not wish to sell any pipe dreams or any false hopes. And so we have to understand the context in which we live in Grenada. Almost all of the materials used in housing is imported. from the lumber, the cement, the sand. The only thing we don't import yet is aggregates in the form of gravel or probably stone. Steel is imported, every other thing, paint, nails, screws, galvanized. It's all imported. So we have to understand that when we are importing materials, we largely are unable to control the cost of it. In terms of the primary cost, we are unable to control the freight. And then obviously the primary means through which the government derives revenue is essentially VAT and customs duties at our port. So we should never pretend that we are going to get to a point where housing is cheap compared to a lot of the larger countries. And even the larger countries, Canada, for example, has had significant challenges with housing. So this is an international challenge that all governments face. And so it's important for us in Grenada, when we do get housing, for us to take care of it, for us to ensure we don't take it for granted and that we do everything we can to improve it. There are other initiatives that we are looking at. In Project 500 is just one, because we have to look at the different segments in the housing market in Grenada. There are some persons who could afford a 50 or 75,000 apartment. There are some persons who could afford a 250, maybe two-bedroom house. There are some persons who may be able to afford a $350,000, $400,000 three-bedroom house. And so we are looking to try and see how we can address each of the segments, not by the government building the homes necessarily, but by us working with the private sector. The insurance, a good example. Wooden homes, traditionally insurance companies would not insure them because of the fire risk. We are working, the Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation has been speaking to the insurance companies and working to see if we can persuade them to insure them. And obviously if you're able to insure them, it means the banks are more likely to give you lending for it, because at least they have the assurance that if something would happen, a hurricane or fire, then at least it's insured and they can recover. So those are some of the initiatives that is ongoing in terms of reducing or making housing more affordable. We do plan to study whether putting as much as 600 units on the market for that are selling at $45,000 and $75,000 through the Housing Authority, whether that has made any difference in the cost of rent itself for persons who rent homes, but we'll have to gather that data. I would say this, it's important for us not to think that all of the properties that are on the market are only those that are advertised through real estate agents, and especially if they are in the south of the island. Because there is some distortion in the south of the island where a lot of the prices are quoted in US, where there's obviously higher demand for housing because of the larger commercial activity, and where you also have the pressure of St. George's University students. But even so, even in the True Blue area, for example, you've seen enormous construction taking place, enormous apartments going up, which means that we believe the further out you go from St. George's University, from True Blue, from Lansapine, we expect the rents and the price of the rents to come down. In some places in St. Patrick, when you drive around, there are a lot of abandoned homes or closed up homes. So we also are trying to spread economic activity further out of St. George's, so again people could stay rather than have to come down to the south, and hopefully that could also help influence the cost of housing and accommodation in the long run.
Okay. And I believe we have another question from the street.
Hello, Prime Minister. Good day. How are you? I am Brenda, which you already know. My question to you is, would you consider intercall, get with groups of individuals, that is, and consider intercall being staged later on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? I think we might have lots of opposition to the weekend, but can it start later in the afternoon and go into the evening? I think it has morphed beyond the 10 o'clock in the morning and the kind of participation we're having. And while we're thinking about that, we can think about installing 2 more stands on the left side in the Kirani James Athletic Stadium. That's all I have for you for the moment.
Thank you, Brenda, for the question. So I will start by saying, Intercall is really the Grenada Association of Principals of Secondary Schools. And I don't want them to think I'm in any way trying to encroach on their show. So I think the question would really have to be directed firstly to them, because they're the primary organizers. What the government does is support and facilitate them in the hosting of the games. I suspect because it is primarily a school event, that the aim of the principals is to host the events largely during normal school time. So the question of whether they would be prepared to have it go later is something they would have to perhaps discuss with stakeholders, including the government, and determine. There obviously are consequences for that, because naturally the later, if you start later and you go later, then it obviously feels less and less as a school event, and then people may think you are trying to professionalize what is ultimately an amateur type activity for schools. So I think that's the main concern. But I do take the point that certainly for more professional type track and field, that it starts late and the athletes tend to run in the night. In relation to the extra 2 stands at the Kirani James complex, well, certainly the stadium is full when we have intercall, but many other times when we have events, we're struggling to get people in there and to get it filled. So we have to sort of look at the cost-benefit analysis to see. There probably are opportunities for temporary stands or for building mongs, which are grass mongs that can host people. So that is something maybe we can look at in the future.
Okay. And we have our final DM from the street.
All right. Good evening to everyone. I'm Ahijah Williams, just representing the say Deacon Mitchell been doing an excellent job for the country. And I just want to tell him keep up the good job. It's sometimes challenging because it's not easy as a prime minister running a country. But so far, what we can see, the development of Grenada and among the jobs and the things, the opportunities to come up for Grenada and trying to get them out of poverty, I love to see that. A lot of people is getting a lot of homes. A lot of people is getting proper roads and opening good jobs. And thank you for trying to give us a new hospital. You're always trying to develop Grenada to open good doors for Grenadians. So keep up the good job and God bless you and keep you safe. And all your team are supporting you and alongside you. Cheers on to all of them. Blessings.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate the good wishes. And yes, that's what we're here to do. We're here to serve the public, and we are certainly trying our best to do so. But it's nice every now and then to hear an average Grenadian expressing gratitude and the support for the job that we're doing. So thank you very much. We really do appreciate it.
And that's a wonderful way to end this segment. And of course, when we come back, you have the opportunity to call and ask your questions directly of the Prime Minister. Back in a bit.
My name is Liselle Walcott. I'm a staff nurse at the General Hospital for the past 16 years. At the Infection Control Department, we do surveillance for communicable diseases or hospital-acquired infections. We do outbreak investigations. So any issues we have, we would investigate it, find out the cause, and we would do recommendations and interventions to all relevant departments. Thus far, with Mount Sinai, we are looking at ways of improving hand hygiene. Hand hygiene has been proven to be one of the most important practice you could do to break the chain of infection. Working along with Mount Sinai, I foresee that it would be a very good thing for us. They are looking into the products that we use, the practices that we do. Going forward, we'll be able to achieve a very high level of compliance and safety across the board for everyone.
And we are back for the final segment of DMs with PM. And of course, this is where you get the opportunity to call and ask your questions directly. The number 423-3104, 423-3104. I believe we already have our first caller online. Caller, please go right ahead and be as brief as possible. Good evening, caller. Good evening. Okay, I think we lost that caller. Let's see if we can get another one.
Hello.
Good evening, caller.
Hi. I have a question in regards to the income tax. I know usually at the end of March, everyone has to file it, and I have normally done it the old-fashioned manual way and realized I didn't get the form from the ministry as I normally would. I went online, but what I saw was that it said to register as a new taxpayer, choose the individual option if you are a salaried employee earning more than $36,000 per annum. The thing is, I'm earning less than that, so should I still select register as an individual option to file the income tax or not? That's really my question.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the question. I'm not sure if I could answer it because it's fairly technical. What I can do is we will note the question and I'll ask the Ministry of Finance and in particular the IRD department to perhaps do some public engagement with salaried employees in particular, given the reliance on filing of the tax returns online, to make sure that persons are better able to file the report online. If it suggests that if you're making less than $36,000, you don't need to file, then that's probably accurate, because persons making less than $36,000 are not required to pay personal income tax.
Okay. Thank you, caller. And of course, 4233104 is the number to call. Do we have another call online as yet? Okay. All right, so we have another one. Good evening, caller.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Name is Kinners. I'm calling in relation to the students in Cuba. As I guess we would all know, their tensions are rising between Cuba and the United States. And I'd just like to know if there's any effort being made in regard to ensuring that our students are safe, or if there's anything, if anyone is looking into getting them to maybe come back down to Grenada to ensure their safety. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so thank you very much. Yes, we are very much keeping on top of the situation with Cuba and with our students and other members of the Grenadian diaspora in Cuba. Ambassador Glenn is in Cuba. He's providing us with daily updates. The foreign minister here and our team at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are in constant communication with the new Cuban ambassador who's been accredited to Grenada recently. We certainly appreciate that things are perhaps as difficult as they've ever been in Cuba, particularly in light of the blockade by the United States and the prevention of oil and gas in particular, and fuel being able to reach our brothers and sisters in Cuba. And so we're mindful of the impact that it has on our students there as well. We are monitoring the situation. The Minister of Education will host a press conference tomorrow, and he will provide more details as to where we stand. We are monitoring the situation. We do have plans in place. We are optimistic, notwithstanding the challenging times, that there will be some resolution to the matter where hopefully consistent fuel and therefore consistent electricity can be restored to Cuba. If that happens, we see no reason why our students will not be able to continue their education in Cuba. We can certainly assure you that they are safe. There is no threat of military action or anything of the sort at this time, and we are keeping our fingers crossed that it does not come to that as well. But in the event things were to deteriorate further, we do have, in conjunction with our other colleagues in the region, the ability to be able to evacuate our students. But I really don't think we would ever need to get to that point. We also need to emphasize, and I think it's important for me to say this on record, our profound appreciation to the government and people of Cuba for continuing to host our students, for continuing to educate them for free, and for continuing to give many Grenadians the opportunity to make something of themselves, to pursue higher education in significant areas that is still required in Grenada and that we have short supply. So we do not necessarily want to have a situation where students come back to Grenada and simply can't pursue their education. And this part may be difficult to accept, but part of student life is always challenge. Part of it is learning to come through tough, difficult times. Part of it is sometimes living through historic times. I hear the story of many of our brothers and sisters, some of whom sit in cabinet today, for example, the foreign minister who was in Cuba studying at the time when Morris Bishop was assassinated. So which obviously would have been a very dark day in the history of Grenada. So we want to obviously support, we want to encourage, and we want to be there for students and the diaspora in Cuba. We obviously will be guided by their own views as well. Thus far, the Minister of Education has advised me that they have not asked to be returned to Grenada, nor would I expect that they would. And as long as the situation remains stable, it's just a tough economic challenge because of particularly the lack of fuel. The cabinet, I should take the opportunity to say this, we are looking into whether we can provide some greater assistance to the students ourselves directly, and not so much in terms of cash, but obviously because of the humanitarian challenge in terms of supplies of food and basic necessities care packages. The cabinet approved on Monday the provision of further humanitarian assistance through CARICOM and the CARICOM Secretariat to our brothers and sisters in Cuba. And so we will be collaborating with our brothers and sisters in CARICOM. Up to yesterday, I spoke to the Prime Minister of Belize as to how we can get the supplies through Belize and Mexico to our brothers and sisters in Cuba. So certainly this is a time for us to continue to provide humanitarian support and solidarity to our brothers and sisters there.
Fantastic. We have another caller online. Caller, good evening and welcome to the program. Go right ahead with your question.
Good night. Good night.
Good evening.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right.
You got well put together, man. Well spoken, 100%.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
I just wish the Grenada police force and men outside, they could just take a page in your book in the way you conduct yourself. You understand? They men too hostile. They men, especially in the traffic, men too hostile people. In Canada, when they give you a ticket, the way they approach you alone, you can tell them that I know your culture, always give one another stack and thing, but when it comes to business, they must not to approach civilians. And then still, they have men who don't have a stripe them in there, they didn't post in there for a little while. Carrying a 3 young police showing them the same dirty way they have. They must really try to get into that part in that system to try to talk to the police and them. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for your comment and observation. The Commissioner of Police and his team, I know, certainly are very keen, and as the Minister for National Security, I am also very keen to continue supporting the RGPF to make sure that we can completely professionalize the Royal Grenada Police Force, and in particular the interaction and service to the public. In instances where they fall short, I will be the first to apologize on their behalf, but I am confident that the Commissioner and his team will continue to do a good job in making sure that we can try and continue to get the best out of our lawmen and women. It is not an easy job, it is a risky job, and we also want the public to be more cooperative. And in the same way in which we are asking the police officers to be respectful, to be polite, to be professional, we also want to encourage the public when treating with lawmen, well, first of all, to not break the law, so that you don't have to be admonished by law enforcement, and second, when interacting with the police, to also be the same way, respectful and courteous.
Okay. We have another caller online. Caller, good evening and welcome to the program. Go right ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Prime Minister. My name is Princess Warren Paul. My question, I have 2 questions. My question is, what is the plan in place for disabled citizens of Grenada? Can Grenada be made wheelchair accessible? And my other question is, what does the future look like for people in Grenada who are living with mental illnesses?
All right, well, thank you. I'll take the second question first. We were the first administration to create a specific Ministry of Mental Health, and that's because we appreciate the enormous importance of mental health and mental well-being. And Minister Dilma Thomas and her team have been doing a lot of work in that space in terms of making sure that we can begin to address some of what I call just the basic foundational challenges we have. There's a lot of stigma associated with mental health. And we have to be able to do a lot of education to make sure the public understands mental health is just like any other aspect of physical health. And we have to be able to recognize, to diagnose, to treat, and to support the persons who suffer from mental health. So, for instance, there are enormous mental health community engagements taking place. There are mental health community nurses. And part of this is to ensure that we can provide the services to persons who have mental illness at their home, and not always have to take them to an institution because of the stigma and so on that is associated with this. We are continuing to recruit and build capacity for mental health professionals so that we can address this, have more support for persons with mental health illnesses. We recognize as well that many instances mental health and the link to substance abuse, alcohol, drugs is critical. We have commenced the initial work to ensure that we can get the rehabilitation center constructed at Maribo, so there's part and parcel of this. Significant attention has been paid as well to existing mental health hospital in Mongay to improve conditions when you go to that facility. There's no question about it, the way in which we met it, that it was not, there is no way you are getting better, right? And so it is one of the facilities that a lot of attention has to be paid to in the meantime if we are going to significantly improve that aspect of the general well-being of Grenadians. So a lot is taking place in that space. There's a lot more education, a lot more awareness that is taking place, and they need to stress confidentiality and protection of persons who suffer from mental illness is something that we are keen on. So from a future perspective, I expect, just like the other aspects of healthcare, that we should have significant improvement in our mental health. And we have to be able to teach our citizens to be resilient as well, which is part of the critical aspect of that. In terms of wheelchair access, obviously we are challenged by a lot of the traditional building that has already taken place, which does not provide access. But I think certainly the policy position should certainly be that for all public buildings, certainly new build, and for those that have been renovated, that mandatory wheelchair access should be part of it. And as we go about building, sidewalks and stuff like that, ensuring having embarkation and disembarkation points where wheelchair can get on, ensuring that our large public facilities, large hotels and so on, cater for persons with wheelchair access is something that I expect will continue to grow as people become more sensitive, more aware of it, and that we can have both policy and legislation eventually to back and support those initiatives.
Well, that was our final call, and it's about time to pull the curtains down on this week's edition of DMs with PM. But before we go, Prime Minister, what message would you like to leave with, the citizens of Grenada in regards to a project Polaris, and of course Friday's groundbreaking ceremony, etc.?
Well, I think I want to leave with the last point that was raised, which is the point of mental health, to ensure that we make it clear that we are not just emphasizing a hospital, we are emphasizing the complete health and well-being of the citizens of Grenada, and that particularly includes mental health as well, which is why we have a dedicated ministry that is focused on that, and you would definitely see greater linkages between what I would call mainstream traditional physical health and the ability to ensure that our mental health is just as important as our physical health and our general well-being, and to live in a society that recognizes and caters that. But I think there are a couple of messages specific to Project Polaris. One, we are an administration that is not just concerned about the now, we are concerned about the future. And Project Polaris is essentially a next generation project. The same way in which the airport or St. George's would have shaped the future of Grenada when they eventually were built and completed. It's the same way we expect Project Polaris and that general, what I call Hopevale City, medical city, will shape the next generation for Grenada. Two, it's important, I think, for us to emphasize that we don't just talk, we deliver. And there's a whole long list of things that they said were pie in the sky, and as we've said, it's pie on the plate. And the Project Polaris Hopevale is just another example of this. So we want to get to a point where a primary school child believes in the institutions of Grenada, believes in the government, the governance, and the politicians of Grenada, so that when they say to our public, we will do something, we do it, we deliver it, because they've lived through an experience under the NDC administration that has done that. And so we want to invite all and sundry. It is a 84-acre site. We can host the 100,000 citizens of Grenada to come down to Hopevale and to make your claim, take your stake in your national hospital, and to be there for this historic moment, so that you can tell your children and your grandchildren you were in Calavini when the sword turning ceremony was done to build our first new hospital since the 1880s, right? What we call the General Hospital is a Crown Colony hospital, effectively built in the 1880s, in 1881, I think, right? A couple of decades after the emancipation of slavery. So this is a sort of historic journey that we're on, and I therefore understand why you may have skeptics and naysayers and doubters, but we've gone past. The designers are here, the funding, a significant portion of the funding is in place. We will continue to do the preparatory works. I think people will be amazed at the design and the amount of work and technology and thinking that has gone into the design, in fitting it into our environment and making it climate smart. And it will be a wonderful treasure, I think, for Grenadians in the future to behold. So again, thank you to everyone, Mr. Bernard, Mr. Dolan, P.S. Britton, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Finance in particular. Those two ministries, Minister Dennis Cornwall has done enormous work with the team to ensure that we can secure the financing. And I think there's a slide that wasn't shown. I'm told that short of any sort of World Bank borrowing, the financing that we've obtained for this hospital is on the best terms and conditions in the history of Grenada's debt borrowing since it's become an independent country. So it shows the skill and the level of work that the Minister of Finance and his team have done in getting us to this point. So I think it will be a happy day for everyone on Friday at 4 p.m.
I'm always fascinated by how you remember those dates when we have people who want to forget last week they were beaten, but we move.
Yes, but when you get beaten, you have amnesia. So, and that applies not just to track and field, it applies to politics as well. So.
And on that note, we end today's segment. Thank you so very much, Mr. Prime Minister. And we look forward to seeing you on Friday, God's will. And special thank you to our partner stations, Power FM, Star FM, We FM, GBN, Fusion FM, and Vibes FM. And of course, GIS. Thank you so much to those of you who were viewing the live stream on YouTube and Facebook. As always, an absolute pleasure being your host for this week's program. And I look forward to seeing you again next week, same time, same place. Until then, thank you so much, technical crew. Do take care, folks, and we'll see you on Friday.